Can the people on Zoom hear me? Just do like a hands up, a thumbs up if you can hear me. Thank you, Steve. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. It's quite loud.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe.
I'm on an iPhone. I couldn't figure out I couldn't find the mute, the off mute button. Thanks.
No worries. Thank you. Okay. Um, the CSWA people, are you here? No, I don't see you. Okay. So then, Harry, we'll have you come up since our main speakers are not here yet. Is Susanna reaching out to them, Matt? Okay. Okay, so tonight we're going to hear from the Brooklyn Waterfront, Columbia Street Waterfront Association, and they have a PowerPoint. They're going to talk to us about the waterfront and development projects that have been proposed there. And oh, good, we have some judges to be in the room. Thank you so much for braving the rain to be here. And we are also going to hear from Congressman Goldman and his staff about how the campaign has been going. I think there's a lot of background noise, so thanks, Joan. We're also, yeah, it's dramatic. So we're going to start with Harry from Congressman Goldman's campaign to give us an update, and later on we will hear from the congressman himself, who will be joining by Zoom. Thanks, Harry.
Thanks so much, Julia. So I just wanted to come and give an update on how Congressman Goldman's reelection campaign is going. And I can confidently say that the feeling on the ground is that the momentum is with us. We have an outstanding field program of interns. We just had a huge influx. Frankly, I don't know what to do with all these kids. I'm trying to come up with some busy work. It's been super, super fun. And we can say that we have knocked now over 16,000 doors across the district and made over 500,000 calls and text messages. So it's a pretty robust operation, and we're extremely proud of it. But we can always expand. And that's why we're so proud of our endorsement here at IND. We're going to be launching a special IND canvas on May 30th in Park Slope, and Congressman Goldman will be in attendance, so we'd love to see all of you there. Staging location to come, more details. But that will be a terrific event, and we're first of all just so appreciative of all the members who have been coming to our events, like Ira, Art, Hal, Karen, and it's been really terrific. Even we had some people at our recent massive labor rally with Governor Hochul, where we unveiled some of our labor endorsements. We were endorsed by DC 37, and we just unveiled AFL-CIO and UFT. So organized labor is behind Dan, and I'm extremely proud of that as well. And we just want to keep this momentum going. It's going to be a strong month. I apologize in advance for all the commercials you're going to be seeing and mailers in your box. So many commercials, especially on Hulu. I mean, my friends are all, they thought that I have this buddy who uses my password. So he was like, is that why I'm seeing this? I was like, no, because you live in the West Village. Like, that's why. But yeah, so I'm super proud of where we're going. We just want to keep this momentum going. Also, we're looking for some more building captains and precinct captains in the area. Or if you live in a large building where you can help bring in some of our canvassers to knock doors, or just send a Dear Neighbor letter, every little bit helps. Also, we have an iPhone application called Reach, which is a pretty low effort way to get involved in the campaign. Dan's gonna speak more about it, he's pretty excited too, where it goes through your contacts and lets you see everybody in your phone who can vote in this election. And if you know somebody's already for us or for Brad, you can tag that. But if you're not sure, there's some pre-made text messages you could use to reach out to folks, and it just gets the conversation going. Every little bit helps. So it's a pretty cool tool that we're excited about, and I'll have more details, and I can help you guys download that later. But yeah, I'd just like to open the floor for questions. Also Android. Yeah, awesome. The icon looks a little different, but same principle. It's called Reach Progressive Organizing. And we have a QR code later. I think it was like on a slide I sent, but I'll have it on my phone at the end if anyone's interested. Yeah, any questions about campaign, getting involved? If not, looking forward to seeing the congressman on Zoom later. Thank you so much, guys.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Okay. Assemblymember Simon, would you be able to give us an update on Albany and the budget and how things are going and any legislation you think might get through? Are you available to do that?
I certainly am. I am appearing tonight remotely because I am in Albany, where today we started voting on the first budget bill, which was the education, labor, and uh, uh, something else. And one of the things people need to know is that we have many budget bills. There will probably be 10 of them, and they sometimes get cobbled together in a way that is not intuitive. And so today we were voting on a bill that included, um, uh, hello? Mayoral control was extended, for example, for 2 years. This is something that, you know, a lot of the parent groups have been organizing to make changes to this. And, you know, many of them were changes that made a lot of sense, and I certainly supported them. The problem is the budget went so long that, and we didn't want to do mayoral control in the budget because it's policy and we don't need to do it in the budget. But we have 2 weeks left in the session, really, after this week. And we're going to be voting for a number of budget bills next week after the holiday, which is not at all what anybody wanted to see. So they, you know, for basically for expediency's sake, have put mayoral control in the budget. So it's disappointing that we weren't able to have a more robust conversation about that and about tweaks to that would have made it work better for and be more responsive to parents, for example. The other thing is that tomorrow we'll be debating the public protection bill, which is likely to be a longer debate because it includes a number of things such as immigration, ghost guns, drones, changes to the state liquor law, procurement thresholds, things like that, and some a revision to the charter, this New York City charter revision process. Essentially, and we haven't seen the language yet. This is the way this happens. We have a concept. There will be a change that would allow the next mayor to not have to go forward with the impaneling of a charter revision commission that the mayor before it did in the waning days of their administration, which is what happened this past December. So I have not seen that language, so I don't know much more than that, but conceptually, that's what that's about. I have a few bills that have been laid aside, and I hope to be able to debate them. I'm trying to get a few off the debate calendar and onto the consent calendar. But we find that, especially towards as the year winds down, the Republicans like to debate everything because then there are fewer bills that we pass. And so I'm not sure whether I'll get them on the consent calendar or not. Um, so that is sort of what's happening this week in Albany. I have been able to, you know, I think I still don't have, for example, a lot of the information I feel I need to address some of the mental health issues. Like I just don't know those numbers yet. This budget process has taken a very long time, and there are still open items. And so with open items, I don't have specificity on a number of things that I would like to be able to say. We spent X amount of dollars doing whatever, right? And we don't have that yet. We did a big press conference yesterday on changing the way we are doing Medicaid managed care. That is a longer term process. It's not going to happen overnight, but we had a very good rally and also some good press coverage of that bill. And I think I will leave it at that. My campaign, we have been happy to be endorsed by quite a number of groups. You should look it on my website. There's a list of endorsements. And we are finalizing, our first mailer. We'll have posters ready soon and palm cards for people to hand out as well. I'm looking forward to getting back in the district and campaigning more. It's been kind of a slog being up here. And I'm looking forward to this weekend where we'll be in the district more. And while some people may be away, it's also a good time to be in the district. Anybody who wants to volunteer to help in any way, or somebody who might want to help, that would be great. Eleanor's Legacy has assigned me an intern who will work 15 to 20 hours a week on the campaign. So I'm excited. I'll be meeting her on Friday. And excited to being able to put her to work. And so you may be contacted by Catherine at some point in the future to see how we can just start fielding in the last month or so of the campaign. And unless anybody has any questions, I'm happy to leave it at that. But I'm happy to answer any questions you may have as well.
Does anyone have any questions for Joanne?
I see a text
There's
message.
one in the chat.
Yes. Okay. That's my friend
Okay.
Susanna, who always reminds me of things I didn't talk about. So one of the bills I just introduced, and we're getting a good bit of support for, is a bill that would have a moratorium on the creation of new nuclear facilities for the next 2.5 years, to give us time to do an actual assessment of what that need is, where it would be, the cost would be, and what the consequences of building new nuclear reactors. There hasn't been a new nuclear reactor built in the United States in 30 years. The last one was in Georgia. The cost overruns, they thought it would be about $10 billion. It turned out to be 30. And it really dramatically increased people's electricity rates. At a time when we're looking at affordability and trying to reduce rates, the cost of building nuclear, which is just very expensive to build, and of course, it's going to raise people's rates. So, but we don't know what those numbers are. And so what we want to do is have a moratorium and be able to assess that better. And obviously the data centers are another big issue that are going around the country. Nancy Mace is campaigning for governor in North Carolina, wanting a moratorium on data centers. The data centers guzzle a lot of energy. A lot of that energy is dirty energy because it's fossil fuels. But the other problem is that the data centers actually don't create jobs. And so not only are they sort of sucking the life out of everybody's electric bills, they are also not producing jobs. There are some, places. We're doing Micron up in upstate, and that will actually produce a lot of jobs. But the data centers themselves don't. And so that's something that I think people are starting to come around to understanding, that the data centers, they don't give. It's totally extractive. And we need to find a way to address those issues so that New Yorkers are not footing the bill for major data centers and losing jobs in the bargain. So that's sort of a brief issue on the nuclear moratorium. I've also introduced a bill that would replace a lot of our ferry systems, the ones that are not going to New Jersey. That's going to be a different issue because it's interstate. But starting to replace the ferries that we have in New York and in New York City and to other parts of New York with electric boats and getting rid of the diesel fueled boats. So that's something that we're working on as well, and we're getting a lot of support for that bill.
Thank you so much, Joanne. That's very helpful to know. Who's the sponsor on that ferry bill in the Senate?
Senator Kavanaugh.
Okay,
If we don't get it passed this year, he won't be there. And,
right.
we have in mind other people that have ferry landings in their districts.
Yeah,
Example.
perfect.
Yeah, because that's,
That makes sense.
it's
Yeah,
right,
a
exactly.
prerequisite.
But Kavanaugh wanted it. He and I have had a bill that would replace and really look at fuel for trains and boats and planes. We call it the Trains and Boats and Planes Bill because there are various trains. Some of them are still using diesel. Some of the railroad engines that are really, really old that get recycled into small regional railways, but also planes. And some of the planes are starting to use cleaner fuel, but that's presents a number of other issues that are federal issues. And so we really are just right now focusing on what we can do locally, which is dealing with the ferry fleets that we have in New York.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any other questions for Joanne? Matt? Okay.
Just give an update for the state employees about what's going on with Tier 6.
Did you hear that, Joanne?
No.
Okay, and yeah, Steve also has a question afterwards.
Can you just give an update for the state employees about what's going on with the different retirement plan system changes?
We do not have numbers on that yet, but I do understand that what we're doing, different sectors of the public employee environment wanted different things. And so, and some of these are, more local governments. And so there are, I think we're going to be handling the teachers a little differently, for example, because they wanted to reduce the retirement age. Others had different issues, which was the level of contribution that the folks were making. So we are going to be making changes to Tier 6. They're going to be a little different depending on where that public employee is working, and for example, maybe if they're unionized, whether it's a different deal with different unions. So, for example, the teacher rates are going to stay the same for their contribution rates, but they'll be able to retire earlier. Some of the others are changing it a little bit differently. We don't have that language yet, but we have that sort of conceptually, so it's police and fire are going to have be able to earn more overtime, for example. They can't cap out of their overtime to a certain percent, but it will make it easier for them to accumulate time when it comes time to retirement without, doing the like working twice as many hours kind of thing. So there's a moderation there. But that's kind of, as I said, just sort of the conceptual.
Great. Okay, and then Steve Wagner asks, can you speak to the rollback of comparative negligence for victims of motor vehicle crashes and what happened or will happen with the debate?
Well, I can tell you that it is an issue that the members were not particularly happy with. We were able to get the governor to drop her proposal with regard to joint and several liability. I'm not, I think most of us are not crazy about the comparative negligence. One of the challenges in our budget system, it's very, very executive centric. And so one of the challenges is you may have heard me talk about before is Silver versus Pataki. And that was the Court of Appeals essentially said that under the state constitution, the legislature can say yes, in which case you're just doing what the executive wants, or you can say no, and then the executive gets to do what it is she wants, or you can try and make a better deal. And some years were able to make a better deal than others. This was an issue that the governor felt very strongly about. I personally disagree with that. Among the changes I'm concerned about is that this is being billed as lowering people's auto insurance rates, and we do not believe it will actually lower the rates. And if it does, it would be minimal. And what people would give up in terms of their ability to recover if they are injured would outweigh the maybe $200 a year they might get. But the insurance companies are making money hand over fist, and they're not passing. They have not, agreed that they would actually pass down these savings, so to speak. So I know this is probably something you're really not happy about, Steve, and I know a lot of attorneys aren't. You have a very bad reputation, as you might know, and that is that people think that everybody who is a trial lawyer is somehow or other gaming the system, and that people aren't really injured. And one of the problems, of course, is there are some bad actors out there, and there have been some rings of people who are working with doctors and defrauding the public. I think what we need to do is strengthen and better enforce our fraud laws, right? If people are in fact defrauding, the insurance companies or the people, we need to deal with it as fraud and not reduce the compensation that might be available to victims. That has not flown too terribly well with the governor. I think we may be strengthening some things when it comes to fraud protections, but I'm not sure what those are. If because we haven't really focused on those, it's really been on the major policy changes she wanted. Was there something else in your question, Steve, about the insurance?
I had no. I was going to put my opinion in there, but I decided to take it out.
Well, that's okay. I'm happy to hear your opinion. I imagine I might know what it is.
Well, I mean,
But
I have a case where a guy crossed against the light and he was hit by a speeding taxi and he had horrible injury, open fracture. The bone came out of the skin. FDNY firefighter can never work again in the special unit that he was a member of. And if that suit is put into suit now with this proposed law, he'll get zero. And so yeah, it's something that
so file
so
tomorrow.
it's already filed.
Oh,
I
it's
filed
filed.
it when
Okay.
I
So it's
filed it
not
when
going to be
the deal
post
was
hoc.
announced.
It's not going to be post hoc. It's not going to be retroactive. So whatever you filed already is going to be on the current law.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, but that type of situation is one that's very, very troubling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was also asked about election workers. That's going to be, I'm not trying to figure out where that is in the budget. It's going to be in a funny budget, but budget bill. But we will be addressing election workers or the poll sites as being sensitive locations for purposes of keeping ICE out. Tomorrow during the debate on the PPGG, which is the Public Protection and General Government, that is part of the immigration package. It's not entirely New York for all, which we weren't able to get over the finish line, but we got um, uh, uh, a lot of it in there. Not everything, but a lot of it. And that took a very long time to negotiate with the executive. She tends to be supportive of law enforcement, which is fine if they're behaving themselves and following the law, right? And we know that there are instances where there isn't an agreement and somebody in law enforcement calls up ICE. There was this terrible situation outside of Buffalo where this older blind man who didn't speak English got picked up by ICE, He wasn't doing anything, and he was, in fact, was here illegally. I think he was an asylum seeker, and eventually, after holding him for like 12 days or something, they just dropped him off on the side of the road by on a weekend by a closed 7-Eleven or something, and he ended up dying from the elements. So that's an example of just really pretty barbaric treatment of somebody, and that would not would clearly be against the law. And the other thing we would have is the ability to sue an ICE worker or somebody who's with Border Patrol, anyone in that environment. There are several different groups, as you know, if they violate New York state law. And so that is also something that's going to be in the bill.
And that's the bill that that Zelnor is sponsoring in the Senate?
No.
Okay.
That is
Oh, Joanne, we may have lost you. Did we lose everyone or just Joanne? Oh, okay. Okay. I think we just lost you for a second, Joanne.
oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Did you get me back now?
We have you back. Yes.
Okay. So did you hear what I said? It's a budget bill now, but New York for All was Gennardis, not
Got
Myrie.
it. Okay. Yes. Yes. I remember this. Well, thank you for all those updates and for answering everyone's questions. We really appreciate it. We will have Danielle come up and speak about her campaign. While we wait for our speakers to get here, I assume they're caught in the rain. A fair assumption. We do, for those of you on Zoom, just so you know, we do have a very big leak happening here in the Subotnick Center. But luckily we have trash cans. So, all right, Danielle, without further ado.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Okay.
Always.
Julia? Yeah.
Yes.
That's okay. I'm sorry. But one of the things I wanted to say, because I was just talking about the budget and whatnot, but we have another Java with Joanne on June 9th at Principal's GI Coffee House, which is on 2nd Street and 9th Avenue. 2nd Avenue and 9th Street, excuse me. We have our Older Adult Resource Fair, which is on June 12th at St. Francis College. We're doing a free paper shredding event on June 5th behind Borough Hall. And we will have the MTA MetroCard van in Carroll Gardens on the 29th of June. So those of you who are eligible can buy a reduced fare OmniCard and other MTA services. So I just wanted to make sure that I did let you know about those things.
Oh, amazing. And will those things be in a newsletter perhaps at some point?
Well, probably yes. We're at the point where we're restricted about certain communications
Oh, yes.
in terms of so there's some things, for example, like that we can't do after Friday.
Okay.
But there are other things that we can communicate about. So we'll be doing that where we
Those
can.
things sound like good social media posts from a summer intern, perhaps.
Well, yes, and some of the things we can, social media, for example. This is like a wacky thing, but like my email that I send out there. There's an email, a way to send emails through the assembly. It's a little more cumbersome in some ways, but if it's my own MailChimp that I pay for, which is where I send most of these things, and then I can send it because it's not on the assembly's dime. So there's some
Got
navigating
it.
there.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Well, we will have
Thank you.
Danielle come up and speak now. So let me.
Thank you, Danielle. Sorry to jump in.
Just want to add him? I don't know. Oh, I'll remove. Okay.
Happy to serve as filler for the congressman, but also happy to report. I have good news to report. So I believe the last time I was here, I told everyone I had an opponent and, we were going to have to get out the vote. and we were going to try to fight for our right to survive. I am happy to report that after some hard work with some great volunteers, I no longer have an opponent for the primary, and we are going straight to the general. So thank you all for your ongoing support and enthusiasm for my candidacy. I'm very excited to hopefully have that part of this over. We went all the way to the appellate division to, yeah. Yes. And so when I got the good news with the decision, I figured I'd come make the rounds and let everyone know that we're in the clear. So thank you. Any questions? I'm still trying to fill airtime. Anything at all?
Did you do oral argument in the appellate division?
There was oral argument in the appellate division. So we actually won at the Board of Elections and got her off by 950 signatures. So she started with 9,551 signatures. We went line by line and it kicked off 6,500 some change. So, and everyone said we couldn't do it at the board, and I was like, hold my beer. That's between them. Then, of course, because she lost at the board, she had an opportunity to get back on the ballot with the validate petition. However, she did not come with any facts to support how she was going to make up the 950 signatures. So she lost at the Supreme Court over in Queens. And then she filed an appeal, and the appellate division came out with more of the same. So there was no leave to go to the Court of Appeals, thankfully, because I think she would have if she could have. And now it's over finally. So, well, for what we know. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Daniel, who represented you?
In court?
Yeah, and I'm going through the signature.
Throughout the whole process. Okay, so Diana Gonzalez helped with coordinating the effort for the spec. And then my attorney was Marty Connor. So
Fabulous.
we love Marty. So yes, if you ever, hopefully no one needs to go to the Board of Elections and all these different levels, but if you do, Marty's your guy. So yes, anything else?
They're gonna start, but yeah.
Okay. It looks like we're gonna get a next up. Okay, yeah. I answer favorite ice cream flavors, favorite colors.
Hold on, you said it went to the appellate division.
Yes.
Did they try to take it up to the Court of Appeals, or was that rejected or anything like that? Because I know you can only go to the Court of Appeals under certain circumstances.
I believe there was a request to, so we were able to get the decision a day early before it was released to the public. And upon reading that decision, it was determined that there was nothing to take to the Court of Appeals. That would have been different. So, oh yes, it was in Queens because we all work in Kings County, and there was, we wanted to avoid the appearance of impropriety. So basically anyone who had a job in a Kings County court, all of those cases were administratively transferred immediately to Queens County. So we are also grateful to the Queens County Supreme Court for taking on half of our election law caseload this year. It was quite the burden, and they did a great job, I think, with the resources they had.
Thank you for filibustering.
Thank you. Anytime.
Congratulations. All right. John and Randy are here from CSWA, and they are our main speakers tonight. Congressman Dan Goldman is going to come say hi. However, I think he's being interviewed by Anderson Cooper, so he can only chime in at 7:55. So they will pause their presentation at that point for him to say hi and give us an update. I'm going to try to pull up the PowerPoint now. I see it here. Do you want to take over? Yeah? Okay, and you all can introduce yourselves. Put it in presentation mode. What is, okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. And you can introduce yourself.
Good evening. You guys have probably seen me here before because I'm a member. So this is great, right? Thank you so much. My name is John Leyva. I'm the Vice President of the Columbia Street Waterfront Association. This is Randy Gordon, our fearless leader. He's the president of the Columbia Street Waterfront Association. And we actually had to start because of the BMT, because the BMT, they kept us out. And one of the reasons they said is because we didn't have an official association, governing our neighborhood, which, whatever. But that's what they told us, so we created one. So. Right? And so, I don't know, I've never really done it like this. So we just wanted to talk about what happened here. And I'm sorry. So, because I can't get this thing off here.
You just click out of it.
You know what happened? Okay. So so what I said, because the first thing that comes up is that you guys just NIMBYs and don't want housing. And that's not it at all, right? We're not NIMBYs. This is not a NIMBY argument or a YIMBY argument. It's really a proper land use argument. Whether irreplaceable public port land should be converted before the city approves a full maritime future was seriously studied. And so they presented it, and I don't know, is everybody familiar? Because I'm jumping right in because this thing takes so long, it was so hard to even try to describe it in 20 minutes, so.
You have a lot of time.
Listen, we'll be here all weekend. So much. This is.
Some people live in Park Slope.
Yeah, okay.
So, you can give a little
Yeah.
background.
Okay, so it's the Brooklyn Marine Terminal. It's 122 acres. When Eric Adams, they described the swap, they said it was the biggest land transfer in 2 decades. It's the whole waterfront from Brooklyn Bridge Park, right there, Pier 7, all the way up to Pier 12, where the cruise, and a little past that, right? So between Sunset Park and whatever. So we've been looking at this land for forever. I lived there 31 years, right? And what it could be and what it should be. And it hasn't been that. For a long time, it's just been, they've been parking garbage trucks. They've been putting, at one point they had that salt for the streets, and that was going all over the neighborhood. Last we had to fight because they put a concrete recycling, and that was putting out toxic dust all over the neighborhood, and it was horrible. So we've had all these uses that, we see other waterfronts all over the city, and they're beautiful, right? Esplanades or whatever. So when we heard that there was going to be a redevelopment, we're like, yes, finally, we're going to get the attention that we deserve. Our neighborhood is finally going to get some investment. Because we've been cut off by from the whole city. We got Atlantic Avenue that kind of cuts us off there. Then we have the BQE ditch, which just totally cut us off from the rest of Brooklyn. Then we have the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. So it's like a little slither there. And our community pays the burden for a lot of things, because for everybody to get around the city and freight to move on trucks, we have to deal with all the BQE. I have windows to it, because I live 1 block, it's half a block from the BMT and a block, pretty much, like a block from actually the other way around. Half a block from the BQE ditch, and then the BMT is on the other side. So I'm right in the middle. And I have windows to the BMT, I'm sorry, it's been a long day. And we just came from another event. So the highways like that, I can't even open the windows. It's like a soot that comes up. It's like a dark soot, and it's just the noise and everything. It's horrible. Should have been covered from day one, right? That was Robert Moses' gift to us, right? And so when we heard that all this was happening, that we were like, yes, we're gonna get some investment, because we haven't had investment in our community for forever, right? And they would always say, we're going to get a park on DeGraw, and then it would start, and then it wouldn't, and then we never get anything. So finally, so this was happening. And when they put out a survey and they asked us, I heard that they were surprised by this, from somebody internally told me this, that our community, because our community is very pragmatic and very reasonable, and we understand, every other community would probably say, get rid of the ports and just build a beautiful esplanade, put a Ferris wheel like they did in Staten, they wanted to do in Staten Island, you know, something, you know, whatever, a big park or whatever. We're like, no, we want the port. We know that we need the port. Like we've seen all the studies from the EDC, ironically, talking about the moving freight through water, the Blue Highway. We got to get trucks off the road. The BQE is falling apart. Like we got to move stuff over the water, and this is the place to do it. Like, you know, you can build housing anywhere. I'm not going through this thing, and I covered all this thing in the slides, but you know, you can build housing anywhere pretty much, but you can't park ships in Bed-Stuy, you can't park ships in East New York. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the place for ships. And this is, like I said, I think it's in this one, this is not a nostalgic argument. This is looking towards the future of how we move things in this city, and that we need to stop relying on trucks. And this is a perfect way. And it's ironic because they put out a whole big study on the Blue Highway, and it's this big glossy thing, and it talks about this. And this is the place to do it. But now, because the EDC, if you look at their board and all everything, it's all real estate people. So they look at everything through a real estate lens. And even like when they put together the BMT task force, there was a lot of there wasn't any really maritime people there. So, you know, that voice wasn't really heard. In our community, that's what, you know, we've lived with it for so long, so we've known how important that was. And for them to just come and want to redo it and not, and cut it down to size and not give maritime, like, they're supposed to study an alternative, and they're not even including like an all maritime alternative. Now, because maritime is more than just, I should go through the slides because I covered all this in the slides. Maritime, yeah, it's not just the ports, right? It's a whole ecosystem. You got to fix the ships. You got to, you know, there's a whole other, the dock workers, there's the warehouse workers to move, you know, that move the stuff. So like, there's a whole thing there. These are jobs. These are real jobs. Let me keep going through the slides. So the burden of proof shouldn't be to say, well, this is the housing and what else. It should have been, the North Star here should be that it's a maritime port and what that could provide for the city, which is immense, you know, and I've become almost like an expert in this now because I've studied this for like 2 years now through this thing. And I'm more convinced than ever that that we really need to, and what our community has always said is, like I said, I live right by the ditch. We can cover the ditch. It's been done in many places. It should have been a tunnel from day one and build housing on that. Now that's 10 to 15 city blocks. So we can space it out because what they're proposing from Atlantic Avenue to DeGraw, which if you know the area, it's about 6-7 blocks. On the map that came out the day after the vote, because that was a whole fiasco, because they didn't show us the map while this whole thing was going on. 19 buildings, right? And it's 3 40-story buildings on Pier 7, and then from the other blocks, 16 30-story buildings. So I mean, that's a whole city almost, you know, that you want to put here. There's not going to be any room for the maritime and for everything that you want to do, you know. And so anyway, so let me go. So a working port needs space for berth, staging, storage, repair, trucks that remain, the rail and barge and logistics and emergency use, and workforce functions. Once converted to residential, mixed-use maritime line is effectively gone forever. A 122-acre public site should be planned for the next 50 to 100 years, not the next development cycle. A smaller port is not a bigger vision. It is a permanent narrowing of the future. And so they want to make it from 122 acres to 60 acres. And what's funny is that they say that this port could only be a niche port because it can't compete with the bigger ports like in Jersey and all that because it's smaller. So the answer can't be to make it even smaller because you're going to make it to the point where it's not even viable. And I think partly, if you ask me, I think maybe that's what they want because they've been trying, and this is another thing, because a lot of people say, well, the ports are in bad condition because the business has changed. No. They haven't given them long-term leases. They've been giving them only 5-year leases because they've been land banking this land because they knew that this was coming at some point. So they've been land banking this land and they've only been giving them 5-year leases. In that industry, you can't survive on a 5-year lease because you can't get loans. You can't invest in machinery that lasts 30, 40 years. You can't do the things that, you know, you can't get investors. You can't grow a business. It's like you're not going to redo your kitchen if you only have a 2-year lease and spend $40,000 because you might be out in 2 years and you're out your 40,000. Yes. Yes, of course.
You said a mixed use port or something. It's like I forget what word you used.
I don't even know what did I say? They call it a flex port.
Oh, a flex port. Okay,
Well, that's
what
what
does
they
that
call it.
mean?
Those are their
What
words.
is that?
Who knows? They come up with this jargon and they come up with these words just like to confuse you. It's just, I guess that it can change. And whether, because like if you do, you need staging, right? Like one of the things that Jerry Nadler, when he came to speak, he was like, we need redundancy. Like when that bridge got knocked out in Baltimore, right?
Yeah.
You need other ways, like when horrific things, 9/11, or let's say the BQE, God forbid, collapses, like we need still to move things. So you need it like even for just that and for security reasons, for redundancy of our logistics channels and stuff like that. So, I mean, this is just a really short-sighted, that just focuses on real estate and an opportunity and doesn't look at the future of New York, because they call it a niche port, right? So if Brooklyn was its own city, it would be the 4th largest city in the country. That's a pretty big niche. And this port wouldn't just serve Brooklyn. It would serve Brooklyn, the 5 boroughs. They say it could go all the way up to Boston, definitely up the Hudson Valley. Move things from here to Hunts Point, I think I say somewhere here where they say the numbers, because it's funny, because in one report, they say how great it is, and in their application to the government, because they got a big grant, right? So on that, they paint it like, oh my God, we need this to move stuff and all of that. And then when they speak to us, it's a whole totally different narrative. It's just like, oh, this is not viable or whatever. And the perfect example of when you reinvest in a port is the one that they traded for, because it was a swap. So the Port Authority, right, owned this land here, some of it. It was somewhat New York property, but most of it was. And then the city owned the one in Staten Island, Holland Hook. So they traded, they swapped. Now, ironically, the one in Holland Hook was horrible, and they invested money into it and they brought it back. Ooh, do I need to stop? Okay, good. I gotta go to the bathroom anyway. Stay tuned.
Okay, we're going to pause for the congressman. Hopefully he's here. Let's see. I see Harry, so last to mute. That's you. Okay. 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 Okay, well, in the meantime, Randy, I have some questions. I'm going to give you a mic. Yeah. I feel like I'm doing a cross-exam of a witness. Can you tell us, where we left off, John was saying that the Port Authority used to own some of the BMT. So when was that sale made?
So the arrangement, which is in a memorandum of understanding, if I remember, was in 2024.
Oh, quite recently.
Right, quite recently.
Okay.
So that's what really kicked off this whole thing.
Got
This
it.
agreement for the Port Authority to swap the port of Staten Island for BMT.
Okay, and so now the ownership is kind of like a question mark?
I mean, I think the way, because I'm remembering, I think it's a memorandum of understanding, so it hasn't necessarily been executed yet. Mm-hmm. It's part of the steps that are necessary for the project to move through the general project plan, because this is going through the state development approach, right? That was one of the agreements that then Mayor Adams made with Governor Hochul, rather than putting it through ULURP, which I think many of us think would have been much more appropriate. It's the general project plan. So that executing on that swap is part of the prerequisites for completing the GPP. I'm not sure on the exact timing.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions about the BMT wall, the presentation that has taken place so far while we wait for the congressman?
Julia, I'd put a question in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to read it or if you
I
want,
see
just
it.
want me
Yeah,
to read
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, go ahead, Kenan. You can read it.
Yeah, I just wanted to know because the speaker had mentioned that his group wasn't represented because they weren't formally associated, but I just wanted to like more about the things like because I had thought that basically every elected official from the city council on up to Congress was involved in this, and it was like a 2/3 vote. So I'm just wondering what other groups were represented, that this wasn't adequate, this neighborhood wasn't adequately covered, or was it a failure on the part of the elected officials that were there? So what was that process?
Sure. So the task force was not just elected officials, and it included the president of the Cobble Hill Association, the executive director of the Carroll Gardens Association, and several leaders from Red Hook, the Red Hook houses, for example, both east and west. So really, there were representatives directly from the community, from civic organizations, from every immediately impacted neighborhood except us. And I know, the story is, I've talked to Alexis Aviles about that, and she had put forth a name to represent us, a professor of urban studies, so a perfect representative, and he was turned down. And the story was we did not have an association. So that's what we were told. So we were left out, and that's really important to understand because everyone had a vote, right? And CHA voted for the plan. So we did not have an opportunity to vote.
And Joanne, can you unmute so that you can also chime in on this?
Yeah, so as Randy said, the Columbia Street waterfront, which by the way is right across the street from the site, so the most directly impacted, was not allowed to be at the task force. The story was not having an association. That's what I was told. I found out almost a year later that several people were suggested to EDC, and each and every one was rejected. And so there was a real attempt to get somebody from the waterfront district to participate. And you would think as a community that's the most impacted that their voices should be heard at around the table. As you may know, this turned out to be ending up being a very controversial issue. There were a number of people there who had various interests, including some people who were related to the port operations, not the operations themselves, but port work, who basically had been told they were only going to get 60 acres. And so they went along with it because they felt they had to. There were some side deals made with other people on the task force. You can read my op-ed about this. But others who voted against it. And so at the last minute, they were able to get two people to flip their votes and vote for it. But so the fact that there was a vote doesn't mean that this was either a good enough process. We had a lot of information that was not actually provided. There's a lot of what is in the quote unquote vision plan that is sort of a vision, but really doesn't have any facts connected to it, not much evidence. And so as a planning document, it's very weak. There's some good work that was done that can inform people going forward, but there wasn't enough done. And the folks at Columbia Street Waterfront created an association. And once they created an association, didn't want them on the task force either, but they are now in an advisory task force. And one of their members has been appointed to the governance board, which is a good thing. The governance board itself has it's probably about 25 people, and there are only two people with any maritime experience on that governance board. And I think that, for example, is a problem because it is a port. It is an 122-acre port. Whether you build it all out as a port operation or you also include industrial uses, whether you better utilize the cruise terminal, which is empty 300 days a year. There's a lot of things that could happen there. And building out the Blue Highway is in fact the city's policy, and it is the future-oriented thing. The issue with the amount of housing, I mean, there are many people who are certainly happy to find having housing there. I'm one of them, but it is a site that doesn't have the infrastructure to support housing. It doesn't have water and sewer. It's very expensive to do the infrastructure work, and there's no there in terms of how do we get there as a plan. So there are a lot of things that need to be looked at, and so the fact that there was a vote means you got a vision plan that is a bit in the la department. And there's a lot of disagreements about that. They did have meetings, but when you have community meetings and people don't, a public hearing, for example, is not a place to get answers because you can ask questions, but you can't get answers. And so it really needs to be, in my mind, a much more iterative process and a much more involved connection with the communities who are impacted by this. And
you.
we're hopeful that'll be happen going forward.
Thank you, Joanne. And we'll have you, talk more about this after, but the congressman is here. So if Congressman Goldman, if you're still there, if you're able to just unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yes. Hi.
Hi, how are you? We're all here. I don't know if you can see us. He seems a little frozen. I know.
Hamilton in 2/3 task force.
Congressman, we lost you briefly. If you can start over. Okay, you might be back.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. In any event, I'm not going to, I won't get into the details of Brooklyn Marine Terminal, but I will say that I disagree with Joanne. There was a long process. 2/3 of the task force voted to support the plan, and to have one person decide that that the plan shouldn't go forward after 2/3 of 27 and a long process, I think, is not the way that democracy should work. But she is right that there is a lot of work to be done. And I think the task force view was that that work can and should be done now after the vision plan, because we will very well may lose the $164 million grant that I helped to secure. And there are a lot of real issues if we have to start over. But in any event, let's talk about the campaign, because I'm incredibly grateful for the support of IND and your endorsement. It's been great being out on the street. I feel like there's a really good energy, a really good vibe. The more people are engaging in this race, the more that we are feeling better and better as they get into the weeds. And it's great to be out there, and I'm looking forward to canvassing with all of you. I think next weekend. I want to make sure you know about the different ways you can get involved. We are looking for volunteers. We're looking for folks to door knock, to phone bank, and everything in between. Anything else that you might be interested in. We have precinct captains who can help corral voters in your areas. We have if you want to write a Dear Neighbor letter, I know at least one of you has offered to do that. That would be terrific. And then lastly, the point of one of the things that we want everybody to do if they can is going to be use some technology to help with canvassing, and I think Harry is there and can
He's here, yes.
can help you guys coordinate that. But that can be very helpful. So appreciate being here, and I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but it is I'm in DC obviously for votes, doing the day job. So appreciate you taking me by Zoom.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Does anyone have any questions for the Congressman briefly? Okay, it doesn't look like it. Everyone wants to talk about the Brooklyn Marine Terminal. Oh, there is one. It looks like there's one in the chat. I can't. Marvin?
Yes.
Okay.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you're unmuted. Quick question, because I think the Congressman has to go, but.
Can you explain why your opponent refuses to debate you?
I can't really explain it. I can guess, but it is very disappointing that we have had no forums. We actually had a forum yesterday, but he insisted that it be back to back and not together, so that we could respond to each other. I think he's not doing any interviews with unfriendly outlets. I don't think anyone has any idea what his actual agenda would be, or his policies, or how he would intend to get anything done, or actually do any of the things that he may believe. But that's why, I believe that we should have a public airing of whatever our platforms are, whatever our agendas are. I've been disappointed at the negative campaign that he's been running, spreading a lot of lies about me, and then not allowing me to correct the lies if we were to show up. But hey, that's that's his prerogative, and we'll keep moving forward.
How is he going to?
All right, thank you, Congressman. I'm sorry, Marvin, just because we need to get back to our speakers who trekked here in a downpour of rain. Congressman, did you have anything else you wanted to share?
No, I look forward to being out there with all of you. I did see a comment in the chat. I think it's a gross mischaracterization that I silenced anyone. There was a very clear process about what the vision plan would be, and the final one was released 5 days before the vote, so that the community could know what's in it. And there were some people who wanted to amend it at the actual vote, in effectively the dark of night, when the community would not have had a chance to do it. And that was very clear that that was not how the process was set up. And I'm disappointed that people would make allegations that this wasn't a democratic process, when it was a task force that was created with my idea, with 27 people, including all of the elected officials and many industry experts and other community leaders, and that it had teeth because there was a vote. And so the community couldn't be ignored. And so I take real issue with the notion that it was an anti-democratic process. It actually was a very democratic process. There were just some people who wanted to skirt the process at the end. So I appreciate all of you being there. I know you're going to go chat about this, but since I'm not there to give my perspective, I thought I would respond. Thank you so much.
We appreciate your perspective. Thank you, Congressman. All right, great. I'm going to put this back on, the PowerPoint back on, which I believe we are here. That's where we ended, right?
I have a Dear Neighbor letter. So I voted for Dan Goldman twice. And this whole thing was very disappointing, though, the way he behaved in this. It was so disappointing. Like he says, he talks about democracy, and I'll go through the slide. They postponed it 4 times until they got to the 5th vote. Like, that's not how democracy works, right? And Jerry Nadler came to one of our rallies and said, they don't have the votes, and that's exactly what it was. So they didn't have the vote, so All right, let's postpone it another month, another month. Like, imagine if that was an election. Imagine if Trump says, well, I know I'm going to lose, so let's just put it off for another 2 months. That's not the way it works. We beat them 4 times. They won that last one when they finally twisted enough arms. When Joanne, who we all know, don't believe me, believe what she says, believe what Susanna says. Like, it really was, he was really demeaning to Joanne. There was videos that somebody recorded from inside the room. Did you see it? It's horrible, right? It was just like Hank Gutman, who a lot of people respect in the whole neighborhood, right? He's been on so many of these, on Brooklyn Bridge Park and all of that. Totally shut him down and made him, you know, like, so it is what it is. The record is there. But anyway, let's go back. What happened with this? I ain't touch it. I'm just touching it now.
What's happening?
It wasn't me.
Okay, hold on.
So yeah, when they say a 28, 27 member task force, whatever it was handpicked by them. Like, they knew who they can count on to pass this through. So anyway, this is their own freight plan. Like that one, the Blue Highways action plan, what I believe came out in January of 2025, 67% projected increase in New York City design volume by 2065. We have 520 miles of waterways available for freight, of waterfronts. But most of them, as you know, have been turned into luxury or whatever. But what makes the Brooklyn Marine Terminal different is that it's the last working waterfront. It's one of the last ones really in Brooklyn. So we've run out of places. Like, we've already took all the Williamsburgs and waterfronts, all the other waterfronts. So this one is special, right, at this point. 44,000 trucks are on the roads here every day. And we have to get some of these trucks off the road. 172,000 marine sector jobs by 2035. That's a lot of good jobs. And those aren't, you know, retail jobs or those are real good union, you know, that you can, you know, go up to the middle class. So the NYCD says Blue Highways can shift freight from streets to waterways, reduce congestion, pollution, and create maritime logistic jobs. BMT should be the strongest possible hub for that policy, not a reduced footprint compromise. If Blue Highway is the future, then shrinking Brooklyn's Portland is the wrong move. So, and what we've said, and I think everybody agrees, like the BQE repair, like every planner that I've spoken to, every professional planner says it's insane to develop something there, whether it's housing or maritime, without finding out what you're going to do about the BQE. What are the entrances? Are you going to close that entrance on Atlantic? What's going to happen there? And how are you? And then, like I said, if the Columbia waterfront only has 2 streets, really, Hicks and Columbia Street, once it gets to DeGraw. So we don't have a lot of ways in and out. Like, we're blocked off by the thing. So we might live through simultaneously 2 huge projects. And that's not even counting Atlantic Avenue at Litch, that's about to like in February, I think some developers just bought that up. So all of these projects going on at the same, like, it'll be insane for at least 10, 12 years that we'll be living, who knows how long. So, and they're not taking any of this into account. So the BQE repair rebuild plan should be understood before locking in BMT density, truck routes, and traffic assumptions. The BQE trench cap should be studied as housing, open space, and reconnection alternative. See, with Dan Goldman, this is happening because we got redistricted and you know, things changed. When we had Jerry Nadler and Nydia Velázquez, this could never happen. This would never happen under them. Honestly, they protected, like I'll go through quotes that they've said or whatever. They protected the waterfronts, and Nadler is like a logistics, like freight experts because of the committees that he's been on and all of that. He knows this like the back of his hand, and he says, he says, you're gonna need to expand it really is what you need to be doing. Anyway, so getting the land there ready, like what Joanne was saying, sewers, this, and then it's floodland, God bless you. And it's built on, I don't know if people know the history of the buildings collapsing on Columbia Street. There used to be housing there back in the 80s, and it collapsed when they were doing the sewer work, and the city ran out of money and they left it open for a while. There's a long history there. But as late as 2013, on the corner where I live, on the Grow in Columbia, you can look it up, a building fell there because they were doing Gowanus work and they had broke. So that we're not on steady land. So you want to put 30-story skyscrapers in that little land, that's going to take a lot of money to get that money ready. Maybe it's better spent covering up the trench, right? Because that'll cost money too, but that's gonna, so it might even be cheaper to do that because that's just like a platform. It's been done all over. You can Google it. It's freeway lids, they call it. And they've built stadiums on it. They've built all kind of stuff over open highways like that. And that would stretch it out, like I said. So instead of having all this dense housing in like 7 blocks, now you got 15 blocks and you can make it more contextual because they say it's contextual to our neighborhood. I don't know how. I mean, anybody familiar with that? It's brownstone country, right? It's all brownstones, all 2, 3, 4 stories at most. And these huge skyscrapers are just gonna create a wall there. So the housing can be created in many places. Deep water, port-capable waterfront cannot be recreated inland. The B&T plan should answer the neighborhood traffic concerns while major regional infrastructure questions remain unsettled. Brooklyn needs housing. It also needs to stop sacrificing the land that only a port can use, right? Because I like to say, like, we have a housing crisis, but most people don't know because we don't think about it, but we have a maritime crisis too. Like, we've given away all of our waterfronts to luxury developments and stuff like that. So the land sits in industrial waterfront geography. So this is the history behind it. It's part of IBC and the SESMIA. IBC was created by Bloomberg because when he rezoned like 40% of New York City, he even understood that you have to protect the industrial business zones. So they created these zones so that these they wouldn't have the pressure from real estate because nothing could compete with real estate. Like, it just, that's why, and nothing. So once you leave out real estate and then you start thinking about really helpful things that you can do with land. But once you compare it to real estate wins every time, right? So industrial and maritime land supports jobs, logistics, construction, repair, and citywide services. Residential conversion creates land use conflicts that can push industry out over time. A public agency should not undermine its own industrial policy by creating maritime land as a real estate bank. The City Club warned that residential use would undermine IBC and significant maritime industrial area policy intentions. That's the other one, the SMI that I said. So it's 2 things so that's what makes the BMT really, really unique. The public purpose of this land is industrial, maritime, and not speculative real estate. So the jobs argument is a justice argument. So this was Nydia Velasquez said in 2020. Jobs, regardless of educational background, shipping, and manufacturing jobs, the ticket to the middle class. Like that's what she said about an interview with the Waterfront Alliance. She understood that these are, people need a place to live and people also need places to work without a college education and good work, not just, work in retail or anything like that. So a full maritime plan is a social equity plan. It protects pathways into stable, skilled, union, blue-collar careers in a city where working-class people are being priced out. Port operation jobs, logistic jobs, ship repair, marine maintenance jobs, barge, vessel, harbor service jobs, workforce training jobs are just some of the jobs. It's a whole ecosystem. It's not just ports bringing stuff in or whatever. It's the whole system that it creates around it. So real equity is not just units. It's power, work, wages, and a future people can live on. The community named the risk. The plan did not answer them. So 680, the Cobble Hill Association did a community survey, and 680 people answered, and 90% were from that area. And the number one concern was traffic, trucks, congestion, and congestion concerns. Because once they closed that one lane in the BQE, now all the cars are detouring to our one thing. And like I said, we only have one two-way street, Columbia Street, and one one-way that goes towards Red Hook. So so it's like a standstill all day there. So community survey showed the same things residents raised again and again. Traffic, trucks, impacts, BQE uncertainty, transit gaps, construction disruption, infrastructure capacity, and safety. A just process would have treated these concerns as design constraints. Instead, they were treated as issues to manage after the preferred direction was already in motion. Listening is not the same as recording comments and moving on them. So, yes.
Yeah, I just want to echo that because from the beginning, I remember going to one of these Lego building blocks exercises EDC held in early 2025. And we were told, well, at that point, the plan was to have 75% market rate housing and 25% affordable. And we were supposed to, being residents, somehow come up with an urban plan that would make this work. And I just sat there on this Lego board and I said, where are all the cars going to go? Anyone been down to Columbia Street lately? Nothing moves on Columbia Street. Nothing moves. And I just thought that was amazing that, and when we would bring it up meeting after meeting. Oh, well, this will be a pedestrian forward neighborhood and so there won't be many cars. Like, really? So I think that was always something we felt, and you can see the majority of the communities felt, really should have been dealt with at the beginning.
Yeah, the answer to that in the final vision plan is we're going to have a study. And it's been studied over and over again. Like, I don't know what other study. Oh, and they're going to have an electric shuttle. And we're like, well, the electric shuttle will be stuck right behind the B-61 and all the other cars. Like, unless it flies, there's nothing, like it's not going to make a difference. So the injustice in this process, each time as we neared the pivotal moment, it seemed very predetermined. And that was Councilmember Shahana Hanif said that at one point. And the City Club said, conduct a fresh and thorough public planning process without a preconceived notion of future land use and density. And that's what the whole thing, this was managed. Like, they knew where the end was, the end goal, and it was just a way to go through all the motions to say that we got there. Nobody ever got there. It didn't make any sense. Joanne was stellar throughout this. Let me just tell you, Joanne was, seriously, Joanne was amazing from day one to the very end. Very disappointed in Dan Goldman, who was the chair, very disappointed in the co-chair, Andrew Granardis. They wouldn't listen to us at all. So anyway, workshops and advisory groups created the appearance of participation. Major assumptions on density, financing, and land use were never opened in a way the public could truly shape. Information was late, incomplete, or too high level to allow meaningful scrutiny. By the time the communities objected, the plan was already being treated as the path forward. And this is why this is an injustice, public participation without public power. It's funny because the numbers changed on the housing, all kind of things change. And Randy, because Randy is a governance manager, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
He went back and forth with them trying to get, and he did a detailed breakdown, because they never gave us pro formas, they never gave us anything like that, or itemized, and he can maybe discuss.
I think what had struck me at one of the meetings was that the assumptions that were being made about the financing, which were always very, very high level, right? I mean, it's a weird plan. If you read the vision plan, you'll think, boy, they went into levels of detail that don't sound like a vision plan, right? The exact number of units in different locations, and yet they never showed the average square foot per unit, which is pretty basic. And the financing assumptions were incredibly broad. And I think it was because I went to one of these meetings and someone brought up the point, what if the market changes so you don't get the returns you expect? And it's basically like they had no answer to that. So I did. I took a really deep dive. I went through every document that was presented to task force. By the way, task force meetings were done in private, which has been raised as a legal issue. Why didn't the open meetings?
I'm actually suing over that. Open meetings laws.
So I put that all together, and I basically showed that it just didn't work. And I sent several letters to the EDC, and they wrote back. They did not contest me. They basically said, well, this is the way city plans work. We'll work it out later. So it was not very impressive.
Yeah, there's too much at stake. I mean, the injustice started the minute New York City has the URLIP process to determine land use issues. They decided to skip that. And if you look at the history, right, Andrew Kimball was the leader of the EDC at the time when this was happening. All through, he just left now in January, right? So he just went through what they went, I don't know if anybody's seen Emergent City and that whole thing that happened in Sunset Park. So he was on the developer side over there, and the community was able to fight back and stop what they wanted to do over there. So I guess he learned this lesson here, and over here, then he opted to do the state process. We lost the minute that happened, because the Europe and the GPP, which is the state process, totally different process. So the Europe is like a contract, and if the city wants to change anything ever later on, they have to go through it again. As you can see from Atlantic Yards, the GPP, that's the GPP, it just keeps changing, evolving, and revisioning, and this and that. So the minute that happened, that was a big problem. We knew from the beginning. So, like I said, the task force leadership was Dan Goldman, Andrew Granardis, and Alexa Avalos was another co-chair. It was a hand-picked task force given enormous political weight over public land. The Columbia Street Waterfront District, the neighborhood expected to absorb major impacts, did not receive a dedicated representative, even after submitting a highly qualified person to serve. This is not how democratic planning should work. The people closest to the impacts deserve power, not after the fact consultation. So key information was missing when it mattered. Full massing and building assumptions were not released in a way the community could meaningfully test. And that's interesting because we kept asking, like, what does this look like? Like, at least a rendition, what is this gonna look like? Like, what, you know? And they never released that. And that's pretty simple, right? For an architectural firm or whoever, planners, to come up with like a drawing or a model or something, never. The day after, there's a map now that's dated the day after the task force, and that's the one that shows the three 40-story buildings and then the 16 30-story buildings. And that's dated the day after. So even the task force didn't see that map. And that's crazy that they withhold information like that. Financial assumptions, which Randy was talking about, and sources used were too general for the public to judge whether housing density was truly necessary. A capital map and scale of development appreciated late and briefly, reinforcing, you know, I got these new glasses and they're like progressive, and I got to put my head like this to be able to see, so I'm sorry. A critical map and scale of development appeared late and briefly, reinforcing the feeling that the public was not being dealt in honestly. Waterfront Alliance specifically called for a transparent, pro forma, and clearer financial breakdowns. You cannot call it consent when the public lacks the documents needed to evaluate the trade-offs. You gotta think, this is a $3.5 billion project. Like, it really, and let me just say this, their original plan, when they first came out, like the first plan was, they were gonna talk about it from September to January, right? And then in February, have a decision. So this huge development that, like, let's say Gowanus took years and all that, they were gonna do it like in 4 or 5 months. That's insane. And that means that you already have it determined. You're just trying to get people to, you know, agree to your plan. So 5 delays are not a normal consensus process. I think we can all agree with that, right? The vote was postponed 5 times before the September 22nd, 2025 approval. Jerry Nadler, when he came in April, said they don't have the votes, and they didn't have the votes. They just kept coercing people, twisting their arms, and Joanne Simon's op-ed talks about that, right? So I'm not gonna go through each one, but those are the dates of each time that they canceled the vote, right? So a plan that has to be rescued over and over is not a broad community consent, is not broad community consent. So again, Jerry Nadler said the port should be modernized and expanded to encompass the entire Brooklyn Marine Terminal. That's Jerry Nadler talking. The City Club said vote no until a fresh, thorough neighborhood-wide planning process is pursued. The Waterfront Alliance said fuller public understanding, transparent sources and uses, and deeper engagement was necessary. Local elected officials and task force members also raised unresolved concerns about transportation, infrastructure, flood risk, business disruption, and lack of data. Again, Joanne was amazing. Alexa Avalos, Marcelo Matenis, all were amazing, right? The community critique was backed by elected officials, civic experts, and waterfront advocates. So this is why we call it an injustice. I don't even know if I should go through all this because I know, you know, we're running on time. So a generational public asset shouldn't be treated like a financing vehicle. Because let's talk about that for a second. This is infrastructure, like highways and bridges and all that. It's infrastructure. It's the same, we don't look at maritime like that, but that's what it is, right? So when we're gonna fix the Brooklyn Bridge, we don't say, we've got to build a skyscraper next to it so we can pay for it, right? When you're gonna fix a BQE, you know, well, what are we gonna build to pay for it? So to start building stuff to pay for stuff, it's not the way, you know, it's just, I mean, real estate would love it, but it doesn't serve our purpose. So a public process, the community was engaged but not empowered. Public information, key massing of financial and technical documents were not available when needed. Public impacts, the most impacted neighborhood was denied meaningful representation. Yes? Yeah. Public future, a full maritime future was never given the status it deserved. That combination is why the community had to keep fighting, request documents, push for a reset, and ultimately go to court. I'm suing them over the open meetings law because something so consequential, and they didn't even release minutes, and stuff went on in those meetings, and we don't even know what went on, and that's not the way democracy works. So you don't, you know, so the injustice was not disagreement. The injustice was a process that denied meaningful power, and that's very important, right? If we would have lost fair and square, That's what it is. When you cancel it 5 times, when you do all these underhanded stuff and all of that, it's just, and it's too much at risk. Like it's a big project. It's life-changing. Like this area of Brooklyn will never be the same after that. So, and what a just outcome looks like is an independent maritime and feasibility and cost analysis, full disclosure of massing, financial assumptions, sources, and uses, BQE coordination before density and traffic assumptions are locked in, a full all-maritime blue highway alternative studied in the seeker, real representation, community power for impacted neighborhoods like us, housing alternatives studied off Portland, including the BQE trench cap. I think that really needs to be studied. Covering up the BQE is a win-win-win, 3 wins. The city gets the housing that it needs. The community finally gets that. That's a 75-year-old mistake that Robert Moses made that we live with every day. It's horrible. And Maritime gets to keep, the land. And, if we keep the land for Maritime, and let's say we give them all, and in 20 years, we say, well, it's not working out. We can still build there. But once we put buildings there, it's over. That's it. And that would be a real shame to just rush into that. The right question is not how much housing can fit. It is what public future this land serves. Right? Are we going to keep destroying the earth with all these trucks and diesel trucks and all of that, or are we going to really do something that can really help out? So what we are asking IND to do is please support our resolution calling for full disclosure, independent analysis, and a real 122-acre maritime alternative. Oppose any general project plan, the GPP that I told, that shrinks maritime capacity before seeker fully evaluates the all maritime option. Like, it's not even being evaluated, and that's the problem. Like, it's not even like we're saying you need to agree with us. Just let's evaluate it. Let's see, because it's not being evaluated now. Demand that the BQE Blue Highways freight, flood risk, traffic, sewer, school, emergency response, and construction impacts be analyzed honestly, and stand with impacted neighborhoods in demanding a democratic reset, not another managed engagement process. So we're asking for your support because this fight is bigger than one neighborhood. It is about whether public land is planned for public good. Help us protect Brooklyn's last major working waterfront. Brooklyn deserves a world-class working waterfront, not a rushed real estate compromise, not a process that checks boxes and calls it democracy, not a plan that shrinks the very infrastructure the future requires. A 422-acre maritime future must be considered as a fair, serious, and forward-looking choice. Thank you. Okay, so answer any questions? Anybody have questions? Yes.
I've noticed this entire presentation.
Yeah.
Something was missing.
What's that?
Gee, what about shopping? Where do people go shopping? Where are the stores? What's the impact? If you're going to have 10,000 people working, you're going to jam that neighborhood. The stores are going to be flooded. I mean, did anyone think about the idea, Gene, whoa, we got businesses here?
I mean, I don't follow you. So we should build stores too?
Well,
Okay.
I think
All
it was
right.
the kind of thing, again, that came up in some of those Lego building escapades. I remember saying, so is the school going to go someplace? Because the schools are going to get completely exploded. No, I think if you look at what they're modeling, there's really no room for anything. I mean, they'll talk about, well, there'll be some mixed use, some shopping. It's like, no. So there was never a real analysis of what is the capacity.
Yeah.
What is the capacity? I mean, again, I'll say on the record, I'd love to have affordable housing in our neighborhood. I mean, my daughter would love to live near us. She grew up in our neighborhood. She loved it. And it's completely out of reach, right? But you would think the first thing you do is do a real capacity analysis, right? Like, how many more people can this neighborhood handle? And what would have to be done to increase that? But no, it was, I mean, the part I think is really worth saying is that it was very clear when they first released the documentation from this December meeting they had right before the holidays. That was the first time the EDC said, this is going to cost X, so we need to build housing. And we'll need to build a lot of housing. And it was very clear at that point, what they really were most focused on is making sure that they could build the luxury real estate overlooking the harbor with the beautiful views of downtown Manhattan. And that was truly the motivation. And so, one of the things I did was analyze Pier House as a comparison to try to see what kind of money they really were thinking of getting out of the luxury, like market rate apartments. And, and then Pier House, which is part of what supports Brooklyn Bridge Park, right? It's on Furman Road. They've got 4,000 square foot penthouses, $10 million. So that's what really obviously had the real estate developers salivating, was that. And so this all ended up looking like an excuse to build that luxury housing.
Yeah, and your question, okay, like your question makes sense. Where are people going to shop? Where are people going to do all these things? Those are the questions that we couldn't ask, really. We've asked all of that. Like, where are we going to, okay, let's put a BJ's in the middle. I don't care, right? Like, we can do that. But that's not what they're proposing. That's they already had a plan, and that's the point of this. That they had a plan, and communities, especially the ones most impacted, should have some say. And when I moved there 31 years ago, nobody wanted to live on that side. It was a seedy neighborhood at that time. It was nobody wanted to live, and we've moved there. How long have you been there? 20. We moved there, and we created a nice community, and it's a nice community now. So now you want to move in all these people. You don't want to even let us share in the planning process of that. And I just feel like that's really unfair. Yes, sir.
I just want to see if I can clarify something from what you said here. Just and to piggyback on something you said, how we all want affordable housing, but this isn't it. The problem is if you say that enough times around the city, it never gets built anywhere. I'm actually in favor of having housing be part of the proposal. And I just wanted you to clarify something. Is your proposal that there should be no housing development as part of whatever goes on at BMT? Is that what I'm hearing from you? Because that does seem to be what I'm hearing from you, and that because it says here a full maritime future does seem to me like you're saying that there should be no housing development as part of the BMT redevelopment plan.
See, I gotta be careful whether I speak for myself or for the association.
I'm reading what's on the screen.
But what I'm saying, we want it studied. It should be studied. It should definitely be studied. It should be studied a full maritime, because we can build. Look, in the Brooklyn Borough president, he had a whole presentation about this. He had the EDC there, and he told them, I have tons of areas where you can build, but this is where manufacturing, and this is an industrial zone.
We're just trying to see if there's questions.
Yeah, you can. Why don't you give him one of the microphones? Yeah. Okay, there are no questions in the Zoom. Okay, other questions here. I have a question. Currently, how many people are employed at the BMT? Do you guys have any idea?
It's a couple hundred, I think, right?
Like 500.
Yeah, it's a couple hundred. Yeah, it's several hundred.
Okay, and so is the idea that if it was there hasn't been a study yet, but if a study were to take place, they would look at how many more employees could possibly work there if it was a full maritime, just all 122 acres became fully maritime? Like, how do we know how many more employees there could be?
That's exactly what we're asking for.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think a study, and it should be observed that portions of the port are not operable right now, right? Because the Port Authority let it decay so much. So the employment potential of even as it exists today is not fully realized.
Right.
But I think, Tom Fox has a plan out there from City Club that is a full port proposal. And he talks about all these maritime businesses, which would be included there. So I think there's plenty of room to study what a fully functional port is. And I think that's our position, is it really, we're not ruling out housing, but the full 122 port option really needs to be fully studied. It was never studied.
And I have a question, like, everybody wants affordable housing, but like, if we said, well, because we need affordable housing, let's get rid of Brooklyn Bridge Park and let's just build housing, everybody would have an uproar.
Right.
Because people value parks, but people don't value maritime the way they should. Like, and it's really part of our future if we want the city to really survive. And like the BQE, it can't keep going the way it's going. Like, what are we gonna rebuild it? Electric trucks weigh much more than regular trucks because of their batteries. So we need to find ways to move stuff without trucks.
And when is the last time that the port operated as a fully operable port?
I think when I moved in 20 years ago, the piers were all working. I don't know exactly when they stopped.
And now it's like 40% of it.
Probably more like 60. I'd say about
Okay.
60% of the port, right? Because piers 8, 9A. So I think there's basically 2 or 3 piers that are inoperable right now. So probably 30 to 40% is not viable right now.
Let me give you a little background. 2006, a company called Acon, like the developers or whatever, they had a plan to build, what's it, 2006, 2016? They had a plan to build 45,000 units of housing all over, and it was an elaborate, like, there was a train station involved that they would extend it to Red Hook and all of that. Related, a little bit after that, they also had a big plan, a 15-page booklet and all of that. They called it the next big thing. In 2018, Andrew Cuomo, in his State of the State, mentions the BMT. Now, he had just given away Litch Hospital, that whole fiasco, whatever, and now BMT was going to be like the next thing or whatever. He proposed moving what was there to Sunset Park and then leaving that just for like. So what I'm saying is they've had their sites. Real estate plays the long game, and they've been looking at this site for years, and they've been landmarking it and not giving the support that the port needs to survive, right? So the support as infrastructure and treating it as infrastructure, and the leases, the long-term leases I mentioned. You can't survive in that business with short-term
5 years,
leases.
yeah. Okay. Joanne has a question. Oh, I didn't see raised hands. I was looking for questions in the chat. Okay, Joanne and then Alyssa.
Okay, so, I have a question and a comment. It's my understanding that the biggest concerns of the community are the lack of assessment of how this can work and how it would work, because it's been sort of planning in a vacuum. Would that be accurate?
Oh, I think that's accurate. Yeah, I think as I mentioned, I think we've always had difficulty understanding how this would actually work.
I can tell you what many people in our community thought when this first started. They said, oh, we're going to have the Brooklyn Bridge model. It's going to be 1 or 2 buildings, and then the rest will be park. And people
Right.
were okay with that.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
exactly.
people,
Yeah, it can't, we have to sustain that in some way, financially. But I think the thing that is helpful to understand about the port and why it's not as developed, et cetera, is because the Port Authority disinvested, right? They didn't invest in the piers at all. And so it was demolition by neglect. And if you know anything about demolition by neglect, that is the way people let things go so that then they can warehouse the space and flip it for something else. The problem is doing it in on a waterfront is that you actually need a working waterfront for the city and the state, both in terms of the movement of goods and the Blue Highway, but it's also a security issue. So the real challenge here is because there was no assessment, for example, of the market. We have empty units at Brooklyn Bridge Park at the buildings that are built there. We have a lot of empty high-end luxury housing in the 52nd. So began a market study, feasibility study, in terms of finances of it, but also the engineering, and what it would take to build out the infrastructure for what would be a different use, if it's part port, part industrial, or whether there's some housing there and how much can be sustained. So the big issue with the housing is not no housing. That's not it at all. The issue is the density of the housing and the impacts. The impacts of people are very different than the impacts of, an industrial use, right? They're different impacts, but they're very different and they need to be studied. And they, normally speaking, are studied before you develop a plan, because you develop a plan based on the data from the assessments you've done. And so that's part of the frustration here. There is certainly a way to do that now. However, one thing you have to consider is that we have quite a bit of cart before the horse. But the Mamdani administration has indicated publicly at the Development Corporation meeting a couple of weeks ago that they will, in the environmental impact study process, have an all port or a port and industrial alternative. If when you go through an EIS process, you need to have a no build evaluated. You need to have your preferred alternative, which is what the vision plan is, the preferred alternative for this purpose, and other alternatives. And that's required by federal law. So is the traffic assessment that must include the interstate highway, and that hasn't been done and modeled, for example. So there's a lot of work to be done here. I think it would be short-sighted to think that it's all it's going to happen exactly the way it looks in the vision plan, because I don't think that's going to be feasible. But also, it will evolve, and what we need to do is to ensure that we have people that are engaged and get the information, and we do the studies robustly so that we have the data and the information we need to plan going forward.
Thank you, Joanne. And Kenan, who is under Alyssa's name.
Yes, thank you. My phone was scripted for lullaby duty.
Wait, Kenan, we can't hear you.
Hello?
Are you whispering?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I was saying my phone got conscripted for lullaby duty, so had to bump in on Alyssa's. So my question is, I hear that the maritime wasn't looked at, and that there's these traffic studies that have to happen and things like that. But I also hear the presenter went through a long list of other proposals that have been going on for this space since 2006 under various different companies. And I also heard at the beginning of the presentation a complaint about how people always say they're going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to do this. And it seems like now the MOU was signed in 2024, I believe. So this plan has been under consideration and moving for over 2 years now, and if not more. And
Not sure.
it's showing.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just basing that on what was said in the conversation.
Yep.
So if you want to correct that, that's fine. But what was said in the conversation was that there was something signed in 2024. So this plan has been under consideration at least since then. And it's supported by a city land swap, a state plan, a federal grant. These are all democratically elected bodies. And at some point, don't we just have to say that, we've been looking at the site for 20 plus years. It's time to do something about it. If we do these studies, how long is that going to take, and how much more money is that going to cost? And then also finally, Dan Goldman said that there was a $164 million grant that we could lose if the process didn't move forward. And so what is the status of that grant if, as you say, everything was stopped until we did these studies? Thank you.
So nobody's stopping everything doing the studies. They have to do them, and they'll do them simultaneously. They should have done them first so that the EIS will take longer because of that. They're not really in danger of losing this money. Since day one, they've been saying that, except for the fact that they haven't been in danger of losing the money. So that is really not a real issue, and it's certainly not something to hold over your head, especially because the vision plan as it is now can't be built. Right? You cannot build 6,000 units of housing with no toilets. You cannot build it. However much you think you're going to get this money, that money was for the piers, right? To restore the piers. The piers are falling into the water because the Port Authority neglected them for decades, right? So that's what that money was for. that money was not for building housing. It was to repair the piers. And there was a match by the city. So, first of all, let's not use this whole democratically elected thing. Democratically elected officials who were in touch with community and engaged and tried to have a rational, fact-based conversation were basically ignored through this process because it was a preconceived notion by other people. Now, there was not a real plan for 2020 since 2024. We've had our first meeting in the fall of 2024 to begin to develop this vision plan, which kept, no matter what they said, because they told us they were going to do a report, started changing over time. Now, years and years ago, there were people who talked about building housing there, but it never happened because it couldn't happen. There's no infrastructure to do it. So that is part of this. It's not just people not wanting it to happen. There's no infrastructure to allow it to happen. So you have to actually plan these things in a process that, you do one thing before the other. You have to have foundations. You have to have building blocks. You can't just plop something on a pier and think that that's going to work. And so what people are talking about is not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. There's been a certain amount of good work done there, but there's also a lot of work that hasn't been done that needs to be done. And doing that going forward and doing it in a way that has more efficacy is something that would serve the purpose of the city, the state, and the federal government.
Do you all want to add anything or? Okay. She covered it all.
Well, knitting, she does that.
I know.
What are you knitting, Joanne?
Joanne, there are questions about what you're knitting.
What are you knitting? What are you making?
Yeah, you're looking at it. Okay. So, in the mindless department, sometimes what I'm making is, this is my latest project. I'm crocheting, actually, not knitting, but I am making pillow covers for the really, really ugly pillows in my office in Albany. We have the world's ugliest furniture that's been there since Rockefeller, and it's like mud brown. And so you have to do something to liven it up. Right now, I have really cheap pillows that are really ugly, so I'm covering them.
Great. Well, good. I hope that you get to relax and finish those. Suzanne is saying, thank goodness they are ugly. All right. Well, with that,
Say one last thing.
yes, you.
Thank
can
you,
close
Joanne.
out.
Joanne has been so amazing throughout this whole process. Honestly, when we didn't have a voice, Joanne was one of the only ones just screaming and just like really just trying to get us representation and just letting us be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And,
think we've learned a lot too from you, Joanne. We've learned a lot.
Thank you. One of the things that I think is a challenge and certainly a frustration for me, because very easy to say, well, we need housing. Let me just suggest, and the mayor just came out with something about building housing now, rezoning in an area where, for example, we're going to have this Interborough Express. I think that's a great idea. One of the things I have found is that, I've learned a lot in the years that I've been a community representative, a neighborhood association president, the district leader. And that is, I didn't know anything about land use once upon a time, and that's not really what I've done. But I've learned because I was a community leader and I had to learn. And so what I've learned is I know how to listen between the lines and I know how to read between the lines. And unfortunately, some of my colleagues who don't have that experience, I'm not being critical. They just don't have that experience. And so when you look at the people who ultimately, the elected officials who did have background and do know how to listen between the lines, realize that I'm getting some information, but I'm being gaslit on other things. And literally, people who voted for this plan complained about being gaslit in these meetings because they weren't telling us the truth. They would say, oh, well, we have more public transportation here. And we'd be like, what are you talking about? It's a transit desert. It's a little better here than it is there. That's not an answer. That's gaslighting. So the process really needs to be more honest. And if the information is positive or negative, whatever, if it's fact-based and reality-based, that's what we're trying to make sure happens going forward.
Thank you, Joanne. And with that, we are going to conclude because I think we have to be out of here by 9. Seamus, question mark? Yeah, okay. So Marvin, you are welcome to reach out to Joanne or John and Randy with your question, but we are going to conclude. Do I
wanna say
hear
how
a
great
motion?
Joanne
Thank
is.
you, Seamus. Okay, I heard a second. Thank you, Hal. All right, thank you, Ira. Okay, thank you so much, Joanne, and thank you so much to John and Randy for coming in their beautiful PowerPoint and answering all my questions, all of our questions. All right, good night, everyone.
I got to give
Good
back
night,
this
thank
mic.
you.